Hi, everyone. Welcome to the final segment of our webinar series on food waste diversion for college campuses. I'm Sherry Hamilton from the New York State Pollution Prevention Institute, and we've got over 90 folks registered for this event today, so we're so happy to have everybody here. I'll just go over a couple housekeeping items, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Missy, to introduce our three fantastic speakers today. So first, we'll be recording today's webinar, and everyone will receive an email following the event with a link to the recording as well as contact info for our guest speakers today. Second, please use the chat to introduce yourself and tell us where you're coming from. And if you're a college or a university, tell us if your campus has an on-site program, or maybe not, or maybe you're still working on it. And then lastly, you can use the Q&A to submit questions for our guest speakers at any time throughout the presentations. And you can also upvote those questions, anything of greatest interest, and we're going to do our best today to get those answered. So now I'll turn things over to my colleague, Missy Hall.
Thanks, Sherry. Welcome, everybody. So today we're going to talk with three incredible speakers talking about operating on-site programs on college campuses. So just brief background on P2I. For those of you that are new to our group, we have been in operation since 2008. We're based out of the Rochester Institute of Technology. Our mission is to help reduce the environmental footprint of New York State by working with businesses, nonprofits, and municipalities through a variety of mechanisms, including one-on-one assistance, outreach and education, grant programs, and research and development. We have 5 partner universities. We also leverage a few other grant programs to aid in our mission. So food waste is one of our main areas, but we also work in green chemistry, sustainable supply chain, manufacturing, and green technology acceleration. So as a part of our outreach and education efforts, we are hosting this webinar to talk more about college and university operations with food waste diversion. So our three speakers today are Rachel Kornhauser, who's the Associate Director of Sustainability at SUNY Oneonta, Beth Roy, the Community Garden Manager for Colgate University, and Celia Darling, the Sustainability Coordinator, words this morning, at Skidmore College. Can read their full bios here, but I want to give them as much time as possible to talk through the great work that they're doing. So I'm going to hand things off to Rachel.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for being here. I'm really excited to talk with you all, and I'm seeing the messages coming in. It's really interesting to hear where people are on their journey if you're at a campus with composting and food waste. Our process has certainly been a journey at SUNY Oneonta that I will start to share with you now. So I just wanted to give a snapshot of where we're coming from. We're a residential college of about 5,000 students. We are located in upstate New York, about an hour-ish from Albany and an hour-ish from Binghamton. So it's important to note that we're, kind of removed from a lot of infrastructure, like a large-scale composting facility. We're part of the SUNY system, so we have the support and some of the mandates and recommendations from the SUNY system. And we do have a campus core value of sustainability. There has been an Office of Sustainability on our campus since 2014, and I've been in this position since 2017. I also wanted to show, we received just stars silver at our last assessment, which we're really proud of. And also just, to highlight that sustainability, we're really trying to work towards these large scale changes and to have, a sustainable campus. So I just wanted to set the stage a little bit of kind of where we're coming from. So we have approximately 5 tons of food waste per week. These are from 2 dining halls that we have on campus and 3 grab and go locations. This has been estimated both with small scale food waste audits that we then like extrapolated to get the what it would be on a larger scale for all these locations, and also through some of the resources that help estimate food waste, the food waste estimators. Since 2015, our campus, along with the city of Oneonta, Sodexo, which is our food service provider, and Casella, who's our waste provider, had been exploring options for food waste composting since 2015. So in this article highlight, this snapshot of the headline, it's hard to read, but this is an article talking about progress, and it's 2018. So this has been going on for a long time. When I started, I truthfully said to my husband, I just started this job. The previous sustainability coordinator did all this work, and I'm going to get credit for the composting work. Like, it's all in place. We just have to do it. So, I mean, this has been like so long in the making, and I was so convinced for so long it was going to happen, but everything kept on getting held up. We had received money from the Climate Smart communities in New York State for a county composting facility. But because of the partnership between the city and actually a private company that was going to transition to be a composting facility, it was just too many players. And to this day, that composting facility does not exist in any large scale way. In addition, there were no local food waste trucks to transport our food waste. So Casella is a great partner, and they certainly have food waste trucks in other areas. But in our area, we didn't have the actual service yet. So the money wasn't coming in, and they weren't going to buy the trucks until there was the service and the money. So we were in a chicken and egg situation. I was, tracking down every lead I could to get composting on campus, and that was just really not what our campus was interested in. But we do have going for us a very great dining hall setup. We have this funny picture of me to the side, and this is at one of our food waste audits, and we're at the dish room. So there's a dish room where our students, when they're done eating, they give their dishes, their dirty dishes, and any leftover food to the dish room. The people there scrape the food into garbage bins and wash the dishes. So we have this great setup for a very limited contamination, so we could get a good product if we found a place to put it. So this is kind of, the stage, kind of where we're coming from. And then I'm going to talk about now kind of where we are now, which I'm so excited about. So then in walks, after, 5-6 years of us banging our heads against the wall. And also I wanted to mention that, there was growing momentum on campus for interest. There was a student petition. We have a sustainability-based lecture. And that year, there was like all these questions that came up, like, where is our on-campus composting? So things were really ripe to happen, but just the logistics of getting our food waste off campus, we just couldn't crack that nut. So last summer, or 2 summers ago, Casella brought us this product that they wanted us to look at called Grind to Energy. It's a whirlpool product, and it requires upfront investment on the equipment to have in the dining halls. But it's a closed system, a closed loop food waste recycling system. So I'm going to go through it. But it is pretty unique, and the output is at an anaerobic digester that is off campus. So you'll see in the top right corner that silver thing that looks like a sink. It's basically a garbage disposal. So our food waste is collected in the dish room. As I said, the students bring their food waste to the dish room. Also the pre-consumer food waste, so any of the back of the house food waste, from the dining halls, chefs. They bring it into the dish rooms and you can see in these pictures, that food is put into basically that garbage disposal is what I think of it as. It has a hole in it like a sink, and there is a faucet. So you put stuff in there, it's a grinder, and you add water, it grinds it up into a food waste slurry, and then that blue thing next to it is actually a tank, and that is outside the dining hall. So we have one of those tanks and one of these tables in each of our 2 dining halls in the dish rooms. So the food waste slurry is made in the dish room, right? The food just goes right into that grinder, gets ground up, pumped out to a holding tank outside of our dining hall. So now we're going to go to 4, 5, 6, 7 on my little charty thing. So next is 4 is a transportation. So we are able to hold it in these food waste tanks for about a month until it fills up. So about once a month, we have a liquid waste hauler that picks up the food waste and brings it to an anaerobic digester at a farm. We were really wanted to be really sure that this anaerobic digester was closer and would have a reduced greenhouse gas emissions than to our landfill. And that is the case. And we're looking at even anaerobic digesters that might be closer for us to use. So the truck picks up the waste, brings it to the anaerobic digester. And then the slurry is mixed with manure and other food waste at the anaerobic digester. This picture on the left is a picture of the farm of Wagner Farms in Poston Kill, New York, who they take our food waste. They store it in those liquid dumpsters, which is that the blue dumpster. Then again, they mix it with their manure, and then they process it in an anaerobic digester. You could see on the EPA wasted food scale, anaerobic digestion is, 1, 2, 3, 4th down the list, right? It's not the best case scenario. We'd prefer to prevent wasted food. We do some donation and upcycling and feeding animals, but the majority of our food waste is now going through this anaerobic digestion. But for us, this was really a great opportunity for us to keep things kind of tight on campus, to limit toters going back and forth and things like that. There was always concern about smells and where things were going to be held and this and that. So for us, this has worked really well. And then the end result is that the water is extracted from the water is extracted from the slurry in the anaerobic digester. The methane is captured and converted into electricity on the farm. So the lights on that farm are powered by this food waste slurry. If there is additional, they do put it back into the grid. And then the solid material is used as a soil amendment. They said that they inject it into the ground to grow corn for their cattle. And then they also use the solid material for animal bedding. You can see the picture on the right. Since the anaerobic digester was off campus, it was also really important that we knew what was happening to it. And we did go to the farm last year, and it was just great to see, they actually do use the solid material as cow bedding. They had it for some of the injured animals where it was really like nice and soft, and they did use it as fertilizer. So it has really checked out. This has in our 2 dining halls, it's half the amount that we are sending to the landfill. So there's still other garbage, at the dining halls, but the majority of the food waste is now at the dining halls, is now being dealt with through the grind to energy system. It's been, like I said, a long process. It did take a lot of upfront investment from our auxiliary services to purchase this equipment. But I think the idea of having something that was there and that didn't need to be managed incredibly regularly, that we could just use it and then once a month have it serviced was very attractive, and it was worth the upfront investment for them. I will also say that, when we first started this, we were really hoping to get to food waste recycling before there was any state mandate. We knew it was coming, and we were a year late. So, that first year it was just like, oh my goodness. But now we're in compliance with the DEC food waste recycling law, which I'm very, very pleased about. So I look forward to questions after, towards the end of of our presentations. So thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Rachel. That was a great start to the presentation. Oh, you have one more slide. Do you want to go for it?
Yes,
Yeah,
I do.
I'm
sorry. Okay, yes. I just wanted to show what it looks like on our end. So it is a Whirlpool product, and we can log into the Whirlpool Grind to Energy system. Oh, I have two more slides. I'm sorry, I totally blanked. So the one on the left is what we see when I log in, so I can see how full each of our tanks are, so that we can also schedule the pickups. And also Celia helps us manage the pickups in their communication with the trucking company. And then we also get this sustainability report, which we can print out every month, that shows us, what can be produced from the anaerobic digester. This isn't stats from the specific digester. It's, general what could be done. And so it's a great project, but because it really happens all behind closed doors, there's not a ton of place for engagement with students. And that's what this last slide is about. So thank you for giving me the chance to mention it, that we do still do food waste audits in the dining halls, and we have a small food waste this white thing is a forced air composter that we collect some pre-consumer food waste from a nearby children's center to compost, and you'll see we do some education with students. So this project is great, Grind to Energy, in that it happens seamlessly, but it's really back of house. So we want to make sure that there still is the face and communication with the students about what's happening. And at the food waste audits, although we're talking about how we have to remind people the first step is to reduce the food. Just because we have a system to process it, to recycle it, the first step is really to reduce the food. So we're trying to encourage that as well. And I believe that is my last slide now. So thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I'm glad you had those two additional slides as well. As an engineer, I love looking at that data, so it's nice to have that right at your fingertips. So we are gonna transition to Beth Roy from Colgate University, the community garden manager, to talk about the work that's being done on their campus.
Thank you. Thanks, Missy. Good morning, everybody. Rachel, that was really great. I always love hearing what different campuses are doing, and it's very inspiring stuff that y'all are doing and working for many years. I totally understand that part of it too. I'm just here to talk to you a little bit about what's going on at Colgate for our food waste diversion. The thing that we're currently doing, and I will dive into more of our history of what brought us here, but what's currently happening on campus is what we call our Broad Street composting program. We started that in 2022, and since then we've collected over 12,000 pounds of food scraps. Our main contributors to that program right now are our 6 sororities and fraternities who are housed along Broad Street. So we do a weekly 5-gallon bucket exchange program with them. In the fall semester, that looks like about 10 to 11 weeks of collecting. And then in the spring semester, it's usually more like 5 to 6 weeks. Colgate is located in upstate New York, so our spring is more like winter. So that is why it's come about cut in half for that. We also have the option for students who live in Colgate apartments or townhouses to be part of our program. So what that program looks like is that we loan out compost tumblers and kitchen compost bins or 5-gallon buckets to students who want to opt into that program. And new this year, we also have added 2 more participants. The first is a a class. So we have a faculty member who's running a fermentation class. He usually does that every fall. But he weekly works with his students to ferment lots of yummy things. And so they like to give us all of their vegetable scraps. So we've added them into the rotation. And then we have a new theme house that's focused on mindfulness and meditation. And they have elected to join us as well in the bucket exchange program. So kind of a varied mix of people who are participating in this. But part of the Broad Street composting program is that all the food scraps are kept on site and on campus, and they're brought down to the Colgate Community Garden. And we process them there ourselves by hand in a 6-bin backyard style compost system. So this is just a few pictures of the things that we utilize. So the tumblers that I mentioned up here in the left-hand corner, upper left corner, are the compost tumblers that we use. Those are Mantis. I think they're called back porch tumblers. And then we use 5-gallon buckets that you might find at Lowe's or Home Depot. And the kitchen compost bins that I mentioned, right now we're using what you see in your lower left. They're like a recycled bamboo container. But we found we don't love them. So once we are through with what we have for our supplies, we'll probably be switching those. But we collect weekly in a golf cart that we have, and then we bring them to the piles that we manage at the garden. How did I get here and how am I talking to you? I've been a home composter for many years. So I do my own yard waste and food scrap recycling in my backyard. Back in 2008, I went through the Master Gardener training program here in upstate New York. And I did not complete that training because I then had twins, which if any of you have had twins, that kind of derailed things for a couple of years. But through that training, I definitely learned a lot about composting. And that's why I'm going to throw that on there. It's not just my hobby in my backyard, but I do have some training with that. 2013 is when I started as the community garden manager. At that time, we were really just focusing on garden waste composting at the garden, while we're trying to really create a robust program across campus for students to get engaged in the garden. We took that time to kind of learn about the history, which I'll share with you in a little bit, about what were the stages that Colgate had already been doing or trying to do with food scraps, and gauging student interest, which of course is a really big thing. We had a lot of setbacks along the way. Since 2013, we've moved the garden twice. So that took several years really to recover from as we moved the garden a couple times. But that brings us back to 2022 when we finally were at our final current location for the garden. And we decided it was time to bring back the composting initiative. And so that it wasn't so overwhelming, we kind of focused on this. Like, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. For us specifically, it may have to be for certain people if you're falling under the New York State food scraps recycling law. But we really tried to say we can start kind of small and let's build on it and make it manageable. And I'll talk more about that too. But Colgate's highlights. So like Rachel and SUNY Oneonta, Colgate University is a pretty small rural location. We're located in Hamilton, New York, which is a population of about 4,000 people. Colgate's student population is about 3,000 students. We are about 30 miles south of Utica, New York, and about 40 miles southeast of Syracuse. So those are our largest cities that are close to us. Back in 2012, there was a compost club that was started by students. I'm not going to actually share this video with you, just in interest of time, but you can find it anywhere, on YouTube, or if you want to do a little search. It's just a cute little clip that students put together. But they worked with the Office of Sustainability to find interested people on campus who wanted to compost, and they also were working with dining services to do some pre-consumer composting and food scrap collecting. That happened for several years, and I think over the years, interest sort of started to wane, as often happens with student clubs. You have your initial students who graduated, and then maybe people coming up behind aren't as interested in that topic or whatnot. So by 2018, the student interest was a little bit lower, and I think the facilities was sort of struggling with the management of it all, picking up the scraps themselves in big toters from the dining halls, and then managing the compost piles that really ended up just being a dump site in ways. which then has its own problems, obviously, and they don't want to work with that anymore. So I think that was the important part for us of why we thought we need to start in a small manageable way so that people kind of like the idea of composting again, since they were sort of turned off by it. So then we started this compost program in 2022. It's important to note that Colgate currently is exempt from the food scraps recycling part of the New York State food scraps recycling law because of our distance from the closest commercial composter. So we are not required, we are required to donate leftover food right now, but we are not required to recycle things, but we wanted to get ahead of the changes we knew were coming as those requirements change over the coming years. We will be required to compost. So everything from the Broad Street compost program stays on site and goes to the garden. But we have still been working, and it's a several-year process. And finally, last fall, we are making progress that we are sending pre-consumer scraps from our dining halls to Cayuga Compost through a hauler. So that is progress. It's not the end goal progress, that we still want to be able to do more on site, so we're not having to haul back and forth. But we are making progress, which is important as well. Again, alluding to the all or nothing, we've really focused on that with our specific Broad Street program. And there may be other options for people too. If you have the option to do a little of both or something, you can do something small and scale it up appropriately and in a way that isn't overwhelming. We specifically at Colgate were able to start with our sororities and fraternities because they have chefs, which was a new thing to me. I didn't know that existed, but at Colgate it exists. So good for them. But this was a conscious decision to work with them because they're already feeding students, and they're feeding students, and their food scraps would be something that we at the garden could manage ourselves versus the entire dining hall. So it's been a really great partnership for us to work with these chefs and collect everything that they're doing behind the scenes, in-house. Some of the benefits of keeping those food scraps on site instead of sending everything to the hauler that we take now. Obviously, it's great compost for the community garden that we have. We're reducing our landfill waste. And I think more importantly for us is getting students involved. Right now, we still have that option with this Broad Street program that students are able to learn things like managing their resources, being a responsible community member. They're only in Hamilton for maybe 4 years, but they're still a community member, and that matters. And they're able to learn how to make compost. So when we have our volunteers or our student interns working through the system, they're able to learn and take this skill with them. And community building too. I think compost can be fun, and I'm sure Celia will be sharing something about that with us coming up soon, I know. But our students love jumping on our electric golf cart and collecting compost, and they may not love turning the compost, but they can do it together. So they can build community there with people they may not have known before. So those are all really important things for our program. Some of the questions we sort of came up upon when we were developing this program, obviously, how are people going to collect the compost? So when we started out, we really didn't know how much our collectors would be producing. So we started with some 5-gallon buckets, and we lent a compost tumbler to each of the 6 sororities and fraternities. So the idea being the chefs collect in the buckets and they dump it themselves out into the tumblers. And then every couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks, we'd go and check the tumblers, empty them if we need to, and then repeat. But good news and bad news was that they collected enough that we needed to empty the tumblers every week. And we didn't have an alternative system set up yet in that sort of pilot semester to change gears a little bit. So it was a lot of work emptying tumblers for us. So the following semester, we kind of switched gears and we moved to a strict bucket exchange program with those people. So anyone who had students, we kind of made a cutoff of, for us, it was if you house 35 students or more, you're going to get a bucket exchange program because you're going to be producing enough compost that we don't want to empty your tumbler every week. We'd rather just take your bucket and leave a clean one. So that has worked a lot better for us with those particular participants at the sororities and fraternities. We do, I do like to share some of our resourceful tasks. So the garden budget that we have is not a huge budget, so we don't have a lot to work with. So we were able to ask for donations from Lowe's and Home Depot for the buckets. And then we also line our buckets with paper bags to help with the cleanup process later on. And then it also adds browns to our compost pile. So those were donated by our local grocer. Some other questions. As we started scaling up, we decided to include the apartments and townhouses. So that is a little bit different in that we loan out kitchen compost bins for the students who want to opt into that program. And then they do use the tumbler system because it's a lesser amount of students. So we might have any semester from 5 to 20 students who might be interested in participating. So we're able to manage better, that we can go every 2, 3, 4 weeks and empty the tumbler so they can continue throughout this semester. And we do make them sign an agreement that they will replace or they're charged a replacement fee if they lose or damage their container that they borrow. They have the option to purchase it as well from the get-go, or they can use their own container. How do we get the compost to the garden? So when we started this, it was in my minivan, which was not ideal because it was a new minivan at the time and my husband was pretty mad about it. But thankfully we've moved on from that. And we, at first we started borrowing a golf cart, and the second semester we did this program, we borrowed it from the athletics department, which was helpful, but also a bit restrictive because we had to use it when they were not. So we didn't have full access to it. And then in 2023, we were able to get a grant through NICE-R3 to purchase our own electric golf cart that we use now. And then who's doing all the work? Another important question, but we are able to pay interns. So we have some paid interns who work with the Office of Sustainability and also paid garden interns. So they are the ones who are driving the golf cart. We started a garden PE class. Colgate has a PE requirement for all students to graduate. And we thought garden work is great exercise. So let's get them down here. And so we have those students who might be coming on the weekly pickup as assistants to help. And the compost pile management might be any mixture of any of those students, myself, or any volunteers who come to the garden. So really, just in conclusion, some of the tips for a successful program, I think, depending on your situation, obviously, but I think it's okay to not have to be all or nothing. I think small programs can grow, and they can grow interest and excitement. And as long as you're scaling up in a manageable way for you, and then being resourceful, asking for donations, looking for grants, getting students interested, it can go a really long way. So I look forward to any questions you might have in the Q&A section, and thanks for letting me share.
It looks like Missy might be muted, so that is okay. Thank you so much, Beth. That was fantastic, and we're definitely going to get to those questions. But we'll let Celia take a turn now, and we're going to introduce. Here we go. Thank you so much. Celia, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Beth. Thank you, Rachel. My name is Celia Darling, and I am the Sustainability Coordinator at Skidmore College. I use she, her pronouns, and today I'm going to talk to you about how we use joy as a tool for engagement in our compost program at Skidmore. So we're going to talk about a little bit of background, what our programs look like, how we engage, the impact of these programs, some challenges, and if you want to get started with engaging students, where to start. So my background a little bit, I did both my undergrad degree and master's at Clarkson University. And for most of my time there, I was our food waste intern in the Institute for a Sustainable Environment. So I was building up their food waste diversion program from the bottom up with the food waste law, as well as, if you saw part 1 of the webinar series, I was an undergrad on that project and doing research with them. Highly recommend seeing the recording of that with Sue and Lori, if not. But that really fostered my love for food waste diversion. And I feel so lucky that I get to do it in my role at Skidmore. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about our program now. So Skidmore College is in Saratoga Springs, New York. We're a little bit north of Albany. We are a small liberal arts institution, so about 2,500 students, with most of them living on campus, which gives you some good framing for our program. We have been composting for a long time at Skidmore. Our backyard program started in 2011. For context, I was in 4th grade in 2011, so we've been at it for a little while. And we had a windrow system that started in 2014, which was a really awesome learning experience. We weren't doing food scraps, we were just doing yard waste. And we learned a couple things, one of which was we're really good at having learning experiences for students, two of which is we're not the best at being commercial composters. So that system started to fade away in 2022 when we started focusing on food waste more. In 2018, we started diverting our pre-consumer food scraps to a hauler. And then in 2022, with the food scraps law, we started compost in the dining halls, residence halls, and academic buildings. And those are the programs we continue today. So our program is run by 3 student compost managers. These are students who are paid by the Sustainability Office for 6 to 10 hours a week to manage our compost program. So we have Leo, who's mainly in charge of the apartments, Zach with academic buildings, and Clara with res halls. We find that paying students gets them really excited about it and also shows that their work matters. As a recent graduate who was paid to do this work as an undergrad, it's very useful at showing your work matters. And if you have the ability to do so, you also get people to actually show up for things because it's a job, which is awesome. So we have 4 main programs. We had food waste diversion in our dining halls, academic buildings, residence halls, and apartments. Starting out with our apartments, this is our on-campus or backyard compost. We process about 5,000 pounds of food scraps every year, and we love how circular our program is because we use these food scraps that turn into compost in our community garden, which sells produce to the dining hall and then feeds Skidmore students. So we have, I don't know if you can see my mouse, but we have these little tan and green bins that go in every apartment. We're super excited. We've standardized this. So when they move in, their food scrap bin and their magnet is there for them to start composting. There are bags in their laundry rooms, paper bags that they can get to line their bucket if they wish. And then they dump their buckets into those bigger blue bins that are outside of every laundry room in an apartment block. And then on Fridays during compost parties, you can see Zach is on the e-bike with the trailer. Zach rides around and stacks up all the bins and brings them to be processed at our compost party and composted. Next, we have a residence hall program. So this means that there's a green bucket on the first floor of every single residence hall and students can walk their food scraps to. This is collected weekly by Clara and hauled and composted offsite by Loving Earth Compost in Greenwich, New York. Similarly, in academic buildings, we have a green bucket in every academic building. People can walk to put their food scraps there, and Zach collects them every week. Finally, our dining hall programs were a little bit bigger and a little bit more robust. In our Murray Atkins dining hall, or D hall, as students like to call it, students scrape their plate waste into our toters that are here. We're super lucky that there's really no single-use plastic in D hall. So all food scraps, all napkins just get scraped in here. And it's once again hauled by Loving Earth Compost. And then finally, we have a mostly to-go location called the Spa, where you can get plated or to-go. And we have a much smaller bin there that people who are dining in, if they have any food scraps or napkins, they're welcome to scrape their plates there. Okay, now the fun part is talking about engagement with our programs. So this may be the crunchiest thing you hear all day, but I think it's very important. We have a saying in our office of when we solve problems, we want to be motivated by love and animated by joy. So thinking about love for the planet, love for each other, love for humanity, love for living things, really centering like, why do we do sustainability work? And then we talk to our students about using joy as a tool to do those things. I think working with young people specifically, there's a lot of climate anxiety. I think lots of people are nervous about only hearing bad things about problems and how they're scary. But we give our students permission all the time to not be miserable solving problems, especially if they're scary problems. Like, you can joyfully solve problems. And that doesn't burn people out. And I think there's a responsibility to not burn problem solvers out. Anyway, so you can see Zach and Chris washing compost buckets in the rain for 4 hours and still having fun jumping into a pile of buckets and a giant worm costume, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. But those are two things we try to center in our program. So one way we do this is compost parties, which I mentioned before. If you call anything a party, it sounds more fun. Like, you could do your taxes or do your taxes party, and that sounds better. So this gets volunteers really excited to join our compost managers. And there are a couple things we do to make them more fun. We have a compost party playlist that volunteers get to add to, some very thematic soil music. Sometimes we'll get our solar oven out and make solar s'mores during. Our students like to write a haiku about compost at every party. There's been a lot of those. You can see one of our past compost managers, Chris, painting a thermos pink that they lovingly titled the Wormist, and they made it look like a worm. They also occasionally will play baseball at these parties, where they use our different piles as bases and shovels to hit apple cores. We just ask that they hit them away from the parking lot. But there's some good, silly things that are happening while they actually are turning compost. We also had our students put out Valentines this February or last February, to encourage folks in the apartments to use their buckets, spread some love on campus, and also just remind them that the program is something that exists. We do an annual food waste buffet. If you're familiar with a Weigh the Waste event, this is very similar. However, we don't weigh waste. We have student volunteers and students who work in our office live out their dreams of being a food stylist. And any food scraps that are going to go in the compost, they plate them to look like meals. We put it in the front of the dining hall. We find that this is a lot easier for people to process and see what food looks like, because it might be like, wow, 500 pounds of food waste. People don't know what that looks like, but they do know what a table of food looks like. So we have really good conversations with people about food waste and what they can do to reduce it and why it's a problem. So we really like doing this event. It's also super fun. The Big Green Scream is the biggest sporting event at Skidmore College. It's a doubleheader basketball game, and we really focus on the green aspect of the Big Green Scream. So we have waste sorting during it. We'll get our smoothie bike out. But we also focus on our compost program. So you can see the bag monster and the worm are kind of our two mascots that we're trying to hype up our compost program. We do a halftime show where you can see folks dressed up as hungry hippos, and they have grabbers to sort landfill recycling, and we have some fake food for food waste we put in the center, and folks have a competition to sort it the best. If you look in the back of the picture on the bottom right, there's our worm on the mic hyping them up and reminding everybody to use all of the compost programs on campus. And this really helps us reach a wider audience. It's also fun and silly and memorable, and people remember the worm. And sometimes you need to be silly to be memorable, and reach folks that just don't pay attention. We also focus on short form video content. Students are scrolling, they're on Instagram on their phones, so they might as well be consuming something that's teaching them about sustainability or how they can make the world a better place. I highly recommend, I'm not going to play any now, but go check out at Sustainable Skidmore on Instagram to see some of the fun compost stuff that they've done. Next, I'm going to talk about the impact of our program. So we've been able to divert in 2024 114 tons composted, not going to landfill, which is so awesome. That is hauled by Loving Earth Compost. And then we do about 5,000 pounds in our backyard. We also have a food donation program with a club called Feed More that they drive surplus food that's edible to LifeWorks, a local hunger organization, and that's a really cool opportunity for students. So a small institution has a big impact on what we can divert. Every program has challenges. Contamination, I would like to hear of a compost program that has no contamination. If anybody has the silver bullet solution, let me know. I would love to know. Another thing is participation. You can bring a horse to the water, but you can't make them drink. So we would love for every single apartment to actually use their bin. We found that a lot more folks are participating now that we had the bins in the apartment, opposed to just hanging it on the doorknob as we've done in the past. So that's been exciting with that standardization we've been working on. And finally, we've had some struggles in the past maintaining a hauler. We had 3 haulers in 6 months, and that was a little bit of an overwhelming experience, but we've really been sticking with Loving Earth Compost and love working with them. So we're grateful for that. My advice, if you want to start a food scrap diversion program or just do some food scraps events, really focus on partnerships. Like, find folks on campus who are excited about things. Our dining folks are always excited to do the food waste buffet, mutual benefit for them. If you can find excited students, that makes life so much easier. And frankly, if you do center things in joy, a lot more times they are excited. And always put fun in the middle if you can. You catch a lot more people with joy. So to conclude, Skidmore has been composting for a long time. We've really centered in our student-led programs and try to center joy to make them run successfully. Something we're really excited about is one of our student compost managers that graduated now works for our hauler full-time and composts our stuff that gets hauled, which is really exciting. So they love it and it draws lots of people in. Thank you so much for your time, everybody. Please feel free to reach out. I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Celia. Sorry about my microphone issues earlier. So that's why we have two people on the back end hosting so they can share those responsibilities. So now we're going to move into the Q&A section for this webinar. Yes, thank you. So if you haven't had a chance to look at the questions that are already in there, please feel free. You can upvote ones that you want us to try to answer over the next 15 minutes. So I'm going to start out with one for the full group. And it was one that was on my list as well. Do you three have thoughts or advice on how to apply your tech or the university's techniques to other larger scale campuses? So the example given by one of our attendees is Stony Brook, which has an undergrad population of about 17,000. So a little bit different scale than what you three are working at, but what kinds of things might be translatable versus not based on what you have going
on? I'll hop on to that and shout out to Stony Brook. I grew up in Stony Brook, went to Oneonta High School again. But I think that one of the reasons we did ours is all infrastructure based. So we had an upfront investment for the grind energy system, and this could be applied to any campus. We're actually the first one in New York State to have this, but there are very large campuses that have this. I believe the University of Illinois has it. And you know, it's a matter of upfront investment, but it kind of takes care of itself after that. And we really wanted something that was simple to operate, and that's what we have now. So ours is easy to upscale. Thank you.
Any other thoughts?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of the engagement stuff is transferable based on scale. I think it can be a little bit more challenging if you're trying to do a backyard program with 17,000 students. That's a lot. But I think the education becomes more important, and the standardization becomes more important of how do you get everybody to access the information. Something we're working on is how do we get this in orientation? How do we get modules for all staff and faculty to participate in that? And I think the more people you have involved, the more important that is, if that makes sense. So I'm sure you're already thinking of that, but perhaps including that in your planning process.
Anything to add, Beth? Are you all set?
I think I would just also, I mean, obviously what we do at Colgate would be really challenging to do with 17,000 students. But I think just being mindful of having a solution if you are standardizing it, having the end solution sort of figured out a bit ahead of time so that you're not promising something and then you're not able to manage it, right? So I think you can still do small bits. Like if you have a garden program, I'm not sure what's happening at Stony Brook right now, and maybe you're going to focus just on certain things, sort of like Celia does. Like the one part of their collection is for apartments backyard composting, and then the rest of that can be hauled or taken and done something different with. So I think as long as you're clear from the get-go about where things are going and who's managing which parts of it, I think that would be important to have.
Thanks. So the next question kind of piggybacks off of that with student buy-in with some of these programs. The original question was to you, Beth, but I think it would be great to hear from all three of you, especially those that aren't employed by your groups, how students have taken with these types of programs, especially when food waste audits are happening. What is that experience like that you've observed? Oh, and I would also add on to that, Beth, I was curious with the mindfulness and meditation themed house. One, I wish that was a thing when I was a student. Did they come to you to be added to the program? I guess that's the fermentation class as well. Or are you actively trying to bring in more participants? Okay, go for it. Thanks.
Okay, I'll address the first thing first with the student buy-in. I think it really varies, year to year. I think it depends on the students who are there, and if you have a solid program that you can present from the get-go, like Celia is saying, like trying to find ways into orientation. And we in the past few years have been inviting more pre-orientation groups to come to the garden for a tour, for a chance to volunteer. And then from first year, they know about the garden, because some of the problem is students don't know. There's so many opportunities. They can't know about them all. So if you're able to get to the subset of students who aren't going to find you anyway, right? Like they're the students who are going to be part of the Office of Sustainability are going to find ways to do this anyway, whether you reach out to them or not. So I think it's important to get the other students involved too, so that it's more of a broad, robust base to build from. But again, there's excitement. There's some students, lots of students who are like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And that's okay. I mean, we're not going to be able to get every student, but if we get some, then we can show and we can grow from there. And then as far as, it's okay if I just move on to the mindfulness meditation question, Missy. The faculty member who is now sort of leading this new theme house is someone who I've worked with for many years. So he runs a core class that has been coming to the garden for visits every year for I don't remember how many years. So he is a big supporter of the garden program in whole. And so part of our conversations this year as he was starting that house was, how can we get more involved with the garden? How can we get the students who are there to be more connected to the earth and things? And so we had them come and do a harvest one week when we were sort of in between farm stands, and they were able to harvest whatever they wanted and take it. And so that was a connection we made. And then also just in talking with him about starting up the compost program, and he said, oh, I bet these same students would really love that. And I said, well, we would love it too. So then he jumped right on there. So that's sort of how that sort of formed, that relationship.
I think to answer the first question, something we try to do is very much just be like, this is the culture of what we do. Like, this is what we do at Skidmore. We compost at Skidmore. We have, at least in the dining hall program, at the beginning of the year, we employ 17 students in our office, and they all have to have, I think, 3 shifts where they stand in a high-vis vest by the compost bin and go, excuse me, you need to put your food scraps and napkins in here. And by the end, people are really sick of them, but also they're composting, which I think is good, and trying to like rebrand the compost police and more of being like, yay, we're all saving the world together. We're working on that. Another thing with apartment programs, we try to debunk myths and have our students debunk myths, have conversations where it's like, well, you're really not doing any extra work. Actually, you have to walk less far to drop off your compost than you do to drop off your stuff to the landfill. It's the same amount of stuff that you're touching. It just is, what bin are you putting it in? And that's helped with some people. Also, ways if they're worried about cleanliness or smell, being like, you can put your bucket in your freezer. You can use these bags that we provide to you for free, that just make it a little bit neater. The other thing is we really only need to have one excited person in every apartment, and we have 206 people. So realistically, I feel like we can reach a lot of those people. Even if everyone's not excited, we might get one in each apartment, and that's the dream.
All right, thank you. Rachel, anything for that question, or shall I move on? So the next question, and this is a challenging one for, I think, everybody who operates a food scraps program, and that's related to contamination. I know, Rachel, you spoke that it's a lot of the stuff is happening, or most of it is happening back of house. So the sorting is done by staff and student employees who are being paid to do that separation, which is a big one. I'm sorry, I'm answering a little bit. I know some places do try to minimize their single-use plastics, especially for dine-in, which helps minimize that contamination issue. I will also plug that P2I has a contamination troubleshoot guide that helps to work. Well, it's kind of like, hey, my refrigerator's running. What are the options for me to try out? Because not all contamination is created equal, and there are a lot of different types of solutions beyond just, improved signage and more training. So we can put that in the chat for anyone that might be interested. But now I'm going to go back to our speakers and see if they have any additional thoughts on managing contamination.
Well, mine will be quick, and I'll just hop on and say that, yeah, we're really lucky that in our dish room, most of it is managed. We have reduced almost all single-use plastics. So we don't have an issue. We do have that small-scale composter, fourth-layer composter that we have that we use as a demonstration to put some pre-consumer food waste in. And sometimes students will just come over and put their stuff in. We don't really want that, but usually if they're opting in that way, they're familiar with what they're doing. So on our very small scale, we don't have issues of contamination.
Currently at Colgate, we've mostly been focusing on pre-consumer scraps for this reason, because we don't have a great solution for that yet. With the food scraps that are being hauled off-site right now, myself and our Assistant Director of Sustainability, Julia Sparks, we do go in every semester to do a training with the kitchen staff so that they are aware of what is accepted and what isn't. And we also, even if our hauler is saying that something is acceptable, like certain bioplastics or something, we have made the choice to say no to that until we're confident that whatever Colgate chooses as our utensil of choice or whatever counts, because there's so many variations out there that don't actually fall within the compostable, that they don't actually compost very well. So we kind of, as an institution, are sort of picking and choosing on including some of those things or not when we're training the kitchen staff. But For the most part, we currently are just opting out of post-consumer scraps, and we're able to do that, but soon we probably will not be able to do that once the law changes. So we are looking for solutions as well.
Celia, you got anything to add? You're good? Okay, so one final question to wrap things up, but before we do, I wanted to thank you three, as well as Sherry Hamilton in the background, for making this webinar possible. You guys did a fantastic job. I know I got a lot out of it. I'm sure our attendees did as well. So the last question is related to different types of on-site solutions that you guys may have considered when going through the process of identifying your food waste diversion opportunities.
I saw that somebody posted a dehydrator in the chat, and that was what we were first looking at too. We also did already have pulpers in our dining halls, so that was straining water out of our food waste. So really, we were looking at dehydrators. We were already utilizing pulpers, and then just general taking food waste off campus. But the dehydrator seemed a little too big, and since they needed to be sheltered, now what we have, the tanks, can be outside. Thanks.
All right, I think that is all we have time for. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of your day.